Hi folks, I'm Sheila and welcome to Counsellor Convos. Let's get stuck in. Hi folks, welcome to another episode of Counsellor Convos. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Sheila McMahon. I'm a qualified mental health counsellor. I'm also a comedian. We'll see what happens in this podcast. But look, folks, this podcast is basically focusing on difficult behaviours, difficult people, especially coming up to Christmas time. I'll say more about that in a minute, but I'm dying to introduce my guest. Hello, Ben.
Hi, Sheila. How you doing?
So, Ben, feel free to introduce yourself in whatever way you're comfortable to do so.
Lovely. So I'm Ben Hatfield. I'm the director of Tangents for Talent. We're a media production company that basically nurtures narratives. We find people's stories and help their businesses flourish by telling them those stories in the right way, at the right time, to the right people. And I've been a little bit of behind the scenes on Sheila's team for quite some time now, so that's been a lovely one for me.
Exactly, Ben. I have not paid Ben to say that, by the way. So for those of you who can hear Ben and think, hang on a minute, his name sounds familiar. Ben has been editing my podcast for the last 2 years. And, myself and Ben, we get on really well, really similar interests, don't we, Ben, about behavior?
Yes, absolutely.
And I really wanted to do this podcast on the run up to Christmas. I'll get it out there just before Christmas because look, if you're the sort of person listening here that you get on great with your family members, well, that's lovely. Okay, that's wonderful. For some people, they like to avoid their family members for 364 days at least, and then they're pulled together. And sometimes it can be very difficult to be around people that are not your people. So the whole point of this podcast was to give tips and just to hear us have a chat about how we have dealt with kind of difficult conversations, difficult people over the years, in the hope that some of this might be helpful for people listening. So again, thank you, Ben, for being on here. When I was thinking about a guest, I thought myself and Ben, I'm always talking about how to manage people, family, friends, stuff like that. And I thought, yeah, this is a no-brainer. And I think Ben is fairly new to being a guest on a podcast as well. Is that right, Ben?
Yes. Yeah. First time for me.
Okay, good stuff. So we'll get stuck in dealing with difficult people. Now, let's manage expectations here. We're talking about behaviours. For myself, I'll be touching upon narcissistic behaviours particularly. And we're not talking about people who have conditions, autism, ADHD. Do you know what I mean? Like stuff like that. That's a more specialist area, folks. We're focusing just in general how to manage ourselves around difficult situations, conversations that feel uncomfortable. So I wonder about yourself there, Ben. Had you any thoughts about, I don't know, just dealing with difficult people in general?
Absolutely. Well, I think that it's quite interesting what you phrased there is, dealing with ourselves and things like that. Because I think a lot of people forget the fact that when they're dealing with difficult people, half of that conversation, half of that exchange is themselves. So I think it's quite easy to go into that defensive mindset of, oh, they're abrasive, they're not nice, rather than thinking, oh, actually, did I come into this wrong, or if I approach this wrong, have I taken them at face value and maybe got their tone wrong, or maybe this is just the way they communicate and they're just being quite blunt and I'm not used to that. It's not familiar with me. That's not my communication style. So it's come across as hostile when actually it's just a normal exchange on their end. And I think sometimes it's about being proactive about your approach to communication rather than reactive.
Ben, there's so much in that. I'm going to pause you because there's so much I'm hearing. Okay, so I want to pick up on some of the points. First point, brilliant point that you're making here is be mindful of how you're coming across. So if you're not getting a nice reaction of people looking at you as if you've got two heads, you might realize that your face might not be representing what you're trying to say. Okay, what do they call it? Resting face that some
Yes.
people have. So, just be mindful of that. Kind of what place are you in at that moment? Have you kind of arrived just calm, kind of in a nice nature, a nice tone, as you said? You also mentioned about communication styles. Absolutely. If you're with somebody, maybe you're meeting a friend of a family, somebody you mightn't be used to, you're thinking, oh, they're a bit sharp or a bit, but it just might be them. It might be their communication style, and it's to embrace difference with that. It's just
Yes.
different. As long as it's not disrespectful, I think there's kind of a fine line if somebody's blatantly
Absolutely.
criticizing you and calling you names.
Yes.
Um, so Ben, I just wanted to pause that because there was so much going on there. Please continue.
No, that's brilliant. Yeah, definitely. I think. I mean, you've said it before. I've got this from you, but the world would be a very boring place, wouldn't it, if everyone was the same? So we need that diversity, that change up in our lives, like on a daily basis, just to
Yeah.
make sure everything's not one note and plain in life. So that's nice. But yeah, definitely. I think when you're approaching someone who might be difficult, are they difficult, or are you in the wrong mindset? Are they in the wrong mindset? I think the first thing to do is like obviously reflect on yourself, but also ask yourself why. Why are they reacting like this? Why am I reacting like this? Am I being hostile towards them, or have I received something wrong and I'm feeding into that? So I think a lot of people, when they start a conversation and it feels hostile, there's a sort of like a defense that kicks in, and there's like a bit of a
Do you know what,
you know
Ben? Yeah, I can add to that. If I'm hearing this correctly, I'll give an example of this. A bit like if you see somebody's having a conversation and one person goes, "Oh, how's your Christmas going?" And they go, "Oh, it's great. I'm really relaxed. I'm watching telly, da da da." But let's imagine the other person listening to this is stressed out. They're doing everything. They're the people pleaser, and their face might be going, "Well, it's well for them." So,
yes,
and then the conversation might start to go a bit downhill. So, sometimes if you're not feeling it and you're getting a bit angry and a bit judgmental, it's a good opportunity afterwards to go, hang on a minute. Is there something that that person is getting that I'm not?
yes, absolutely. I also think it's when you get into that mindset of oh, well, it's good for them, isn't it? And then you want to feed into that. You start keeping score and thinking, oh, so it's fine for that and that and that to happen to them, but when it happens to me, blah blah blah, and then you start chasing that short term gratification of, oh, I'm going to do little jabs and little jibes and stuff, and
Yeah.
it's more so when you're in that situation, start looking towards a resolution rather than like towards conflict. Because the more you feed into that, the more it's going to perpetuate that, isn't it? So,
It's
and
almost, yeah, you're right, Ben. It's almost
um,
checking out, is this helpful or unhelpful, this conversation? If you're not in the mood for that conversation to hear how lovely their life is at the moment, don't continue the conversation, make an excuse to go.
absolutely, absolutely, yeah. I mean, you're perfect within your right to remove yourself from that moment and say, just right now I can't have this conversation, but maybe tomorrow, or actually, let's just pivot this to something else. But yeah, I think it's important to remember that there's a lot going on in people's lives. Everyone leads a full life, and they bring that whole thing to the table, same as you. So whatever's going on, stressing you out, chances are it's going to be the same for them. And if it's a brand new person as well, a lot of new feelings come up, don't there? A lot of stresses, a lot of
Mm,
chemicals running. Wendy Hill, the nutritionist, so Hill Start Nutrition, she talks about like cortisol and norepinephrine and like adrenaline, and all that surges in your body when you're stressed out. So if you come to a conversation stressed out, chances are your mindset and your body are set up in a negative way, ready to receive
yeah.
negativity and give negativity rather than, approach that conversation with the opportunity to embrace it. So it's good to ensure that you're checking on yourself as well as the other person.
Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely, Ben. I think that's the first port of call, actually, is to check where you at. It's like, for example, the other day, I had a lot going on, dealing with lots of different stuff. And I had the opportunity where I could have gone into Sutton because I live fairly near Sutton Coldfield, so I'm into quite a lot. And I knew there was stuff I needed to do. Christmas time, you tend to bump into more people during the time. I was at full capacity, And I made the right decision in not going in because I had like probably about a 30-minute window to get some stuff done. Da, 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 da. In an ideal world, that'd be lovely. But then it's kind of like it could wait for another day. I wasn't in the mood for chatting, socializing, stuff like that. Whereas I know tomorrow, I'll be in a very jolly mood. I've got my gig tonight. I'll be finished my work, I'll be able to relax, stuff like that. So it is so true, Ben. The first port of call is checking in on where you're at. And if you don't feel like conversations, it's okay for you not to have them. It's also okay for you to say, "Do you know what, I'm not okay. I'm feeling a bit stressed out today. I'm always banging on about that, Ben, aren't I? Being okay with not being okay."
Definitely, definitely. And the same as if someone's not feeling okay, sometimes they just want a bit of space as well. Maybe it's not, especially as people pleasers like us, there's that sort of notion of, oh, better check in on them and say, are you okay? Like, do you need anything? And bombard them with questions and sort of want to give value to them because we're both very value driven people and we want to provide what we can because we've got a lot going for us and a lot of information, especially you as a therapist. You've got the tools and you want to give them, but at the same time, sometimes they just need a bit of space, and it's about sort of interpreting that moment of, is this the best course of action for them at the time, or vice versa? I'm overwhelmed. Is it ideal if I just remove myself, or am I ready for 5, 10 people to be going, are you okay? Is she okay? Are they okay? So yeah,
You might
definitely.
turn into the Incredible Hulk and you're thinking, God, Ben's on the character today.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they did say they were okay 20 times, so I don't know why this has come about, but yeah.
Oh, I love that. Do you ever come across a scenario where actually you're in a good mood, you're feeling good, and someone goes, "Oh, are you not okay?" And you're thinking, "No, actually, I'm good." No, are you sure? And
Yeah.
that's the bit where you need to be careful of. That was one of the points I want to highlight with this particular topic. One of my TikTok videos is when somebody's pointing a finger at you, there's three fingers pointing back at yourself. And oftentimes people project how they're feeling. I see it so many times. So I can be doing really well. And they go, "Oh, Sheila, you look a bit stressed." I'm like, I'll be fine. I might have been off having a massage or doing something. And then when I think about it, this is actually you're stressed and you're projecting that onto me. But it's important, kind of, I suppose, then not to take things personally that you may feel like somebody's having a dig at you. But ask yourself, are they talking about themselves? Don't say that to them. They mightn't take it well. Are you
Yeah.
talking about you? No, don't do that. They mightn't. But have you ever noticed that, Ben, when people project their stuff onto you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. But over the years when I've noticed that, I've started realizing, oh, do I do that subconsciously? And have I sort of pushed that forwards and it sort of changes your style of approach, doesn't it? So whenever I speak to people and I'm curious about something, I'll ask them and let them volunteer the information to me. So it's like, oh, how you
Yeah.
been, Sheila? Rather than going, oh, you look tired. Because in the
No.
past, I was in
Yeah.
insomnia for many, many years. So
Oh,
people come
wow.
to me, you look tired today. And most of the time, all right, I was tired. But sometimes I had a very, very good rest in the night and they come up to me and go, you look tired, which just translates as, you look like shit. It's about, yeah, figuring out, is that the right moment to bring that up? Or maybe,
Ben,
maybe.
you've highlighted something brilliant there, and that is to ask, don't assume. So instead of going, you look, it's like, feck off with your comments and da da da. Sorry now if you needed to turn down stuff there where I just said that. But look, folks, it is so important to ask, so how are you doing? Rather than going, oh, you look, da da da. Because none of us, think about it, any of us, say, well, you look. I mean, do you know what I mean? Like, how does anybody exactly know what's going on for that person? So it's ask, don't assume.
Definitely, definitely. And as you say, if you remove that approach to communication, you also remove that possibility of you projecting onto someone as well. So you're sort of benefiting yourself at the same time.
It's almost less is more, actually.
Yeah.
Like I often people say to me, "Oh, this has happened." Now, what do I say to them? What does? I say nothing. ask, ask if they want to offload, first of all, and if they want to talk, and then just be a sounding board. Because if people want to talk, it goes back to that expression of a problem shared is a problem halved. People don't want to be fixed.
It took a while for me to learn that.
Oh,
Definitely.
really, Ben? Sounds like
Long
you're on a journey.
I've always been solution focused. So, and especially like with my best friend Brianna growing up, we were very much like rant about something. Oh, this has happened, and then the other one would be like, "Well, can we do this or whatever?" And we'd fix it. So we both had that, strong
Yeah.
communication style on a daily basis, and then going and speaking to more people. Sometimes people just want to rant about things they don't want to fix; they just want to feel. So it's important to sort of navigate and judge that, which
I
is something
think,
I've for a
yeah,
long
I
time.
think as well as that, Ben, that you have to be mindful again and check in how you're doing yourself. That if
Yes.
you meet a renter, because obviously we're talking about people's behaviors, right? So some people might like to rant all the time. You're thinking, oh, jeez, I can't be doing with that now. Oh, if we talk about the idea of radiators and drains, where some people, when you're around them, you just buzz off their energy. I'm sure Wendy was touching upon that with the stuff she was talking about. The energy, the field, all of that. When you feel radiated by them, there's other people that, unfortunately, whether they're aware of it or not, they tend to drain your energy because they're always offloading negative stuff like that. That absolutely needs to be managed because I bet you listeners you'll find that sometimes when you're around, we'll say drains, that sort of behaviour, you're the one knackered at the end of the day and they're going, oh, that was great. We must do that again next week. And you're thinking, no.
Yeah,
Can you
absolutely.
relate,
What
Ben?
can be so draining and demanding. Yeah, absolutely. And it leads you to like the term cognitive overload. There's just too much information coming to you, and it's hard to hold on to all of it. So I always say, like the brains for having thoughts, not holding them. So
Oh, say
it's
that again, Ben.
the brains for having thoughts, not holding them. So if you have a great idea, write it down. But at the same time, don't hold on to all these different things that bombard you. It's good to offload and say, like, actually, I'm a full cut. Let's not change the subject anymore. Let's just focus on this one thing until it's off the books now. So yeah, brains for having thoughts, not holding them.
I love
But
that, Ben. Ben, how do you avoid ranters? How you must know people that you know what they're going to be like. If you give them your attention, they're going to want to rant, they want to talk at you for half an hour to offload all their stuff. Da, da, da. How do you avoid that, or how do you manage that?
I'm quite good with taking quite a lot of that on and just listening.
Sure.
So I've noticed that if I don't sort of not say remove myself, but emotionally don't invest in every element. Just let them talk it through and say, "Oh, so what was going on in that moment?" Or if they're talking about a specific conversation, and go, and but why did that come about? And just let them explore it themselves. And eventually, they sort of conclude it and figure something out along the
Yeah.
way. And that sort of ties up, just making sure people don't branch off into loads of tangents and things like that. It sort of helps them gain a bit of closure on their own conversations. And at the same time, it's something you don't have to return to as well. You can touch on it and be like, oh, how's that thing going on from the other week? And then, oh, yeah, it's sort of feed itself out now. Because most of the time, they are little situations that you sort of ruminate on and develop and build. And I
Mm.
think it's a good practice for yourself as a listener, but also someone who's quite a ranter to get into the mindset of like mental clarity and making sure you don't hold on to those moments. It's like and the best way I can describe it is like after like obviously your diet or your gut and
Mm.
fixing physical health, the best thing you can do is gain mental clarity because then your mind does so much for your body, doesn't it? So it's things like when you have an argument or something, walk away, leave it, and just let that moment be a negative moment because that's what it is. Arguments are inherently negative, or debates that might be quite heated, things like that. Just let that be a negative moment. Don't dwell on it. Don't go home and go in the shower. And I think we've all done this. We've gone in the shower and we've gone, oh, I should have said this, and then they just said that.
Yeah.
Oh, I should have turned around and gone, oh, blah blah blah. And that's a really good point. I'll bring that up next time I see them. And we sort of dwell on it, which isn't ideal. I use with a few people, to be fair, like quite a few friends, I've used the analogy of if I gave you, so I'll use it on you, Sheila. So if I gave you £86,000 but I said to you, you owe me £10 of that. Are you going to say to me, oh, just have it all back then? That'd be silly,
Sure.
wouldn't it? Absolutely.
Absolutely,
There's,
yeah.
there's about 86,000 seconds in a day. And if you have an argument for 10 seconds of them, why throw the whole day away?
Oh, Ben, I like that.
That's the
Go
best
on,
it is.
go on, say that again, Ben. So go back to how many seconds we have in a day, and
I think it's roughly 86,000 seconds in a day. But if you're going to spend 10 seconds of those in a negative mind space, that's fine. Just don't throw the rest away because it's pointless. It makes you emotionally poor, which is it's a lot to take.
yeah, I mean, you're touching upon a lot of things here. Just so before I pick up on that, Ben, going back to you're very compassionate, you're very kind with your time. I'm sure the listeners can hear that because Ben is saying, giving people your time, and I think if you've got the space to do that, I think that's brilliant. Actually, I think one of the kindest gifts you can give people is actually your time. So it is important, to highlight that. It's interesting, I think, with myself, because I've been at full capacity with clients all year. So I love the work that I do. However, there's a thing that counsellors go through, which is called compassion fatigue. And it's almost like, yeah, and I totally recognize that. So I love when I do as a counselor that when I'm in a session, I totally expect a person to offload, and they can offload as much or as little as they need to. Excuse me, because I've done everything to look after myself in preparation for that session. So when I'm out in public and then I've got somebody that just wants to rant at me for half an hour, that's not okay because I have to protect my energy and protect myself because of the job that I do. So it's again going back to checking in where you're at. The arguments absolutely brilliant, Ben. You're about putting that into perspective, first of all, about the seconds in a day. That can be connected with your own personal power. I love the expression that people have only as much power over you as you allow them to
Yeah,
take. So it's again, whenever they're arguing about and stuff like that, they're entitled to have their opinion, whereas you're entitled to have yours. If it's going nowhere, you can agree to disagree. And as you say, Ben, you can allow the person be off in a huff and do whatever they need to do. It's not for you to make them okay. Let them self-regulation however they want to do it. So
absolutely. Yeah,
that there's so much to take from that. Some people like arguments. I mean, here's the thing, that let's not down on the arguments altogether, Ben. And it's brilliant because I can see that you're, you're saying about having the arguments because sometimes people, it helps to get stuff off their chest and to have a good old rant at each other. That doesn't suit me. It's not my thing. But I'm not knocking it because some people, it can clear the air and then they kind of, that's how they do the relationship. Like,
yeah.
it's every relationship is different.
Well, 100%. I mean, I've always been, as I say, in the mindset of let's get resolution focused, let's fix things, let's sort things out. And I'm quite quick to, because I've got quite a lot of, I've analysed quite a lot of what I do and we've
Sure.
spoken about it in the past with like things like OCD and stuff. I've already reviewed behaviours and things. So
Okay.
when it comes to it and they go, you did this and that was really wrong, immediately I'm like, good point, and I'm sorry, I, apologise immediately. And then they're like, oh, they were ready for an argument. It's like, well, I can't offload any of this now, and it's going to fester and bubble, and now it's going to be quite an issue because I can't explore that. And I felt that was fine for a while until I realised actually, what I'm doing is I'm removing their voice, their ability to say and explore that pace and actually provide themselves with context of what was going on. And after a bit of ranting, they realised actually, I might be blowing this out of proportion. It's one sentence said, or it's a little phrase that I've took wrong, but until you've explored that, it holds on to you, doesn't it? It stays with you. So
Wow, but Ben,
I think
this,
it's important to,
again,
yeah,
it's so point what you're saying there. It's interesting. That's one way of dealing with something. When somebody has a go at you, if you say sorry straight away, it's kind of like, but where do they go with that?
it
Now,
seems like
does
it's as well. It might seem like you're just saying sorry to get that out of the way, but actually, some people might be doing that, and obviously,
they might,
I'm not saying
yeah,
be a sounding board or a punching bag for someone, and I'm also not saying dismiss it by saying sorry. But I'm
yeah.
saying if you reviewed it all, it's good to apologise, but at the same time, understand that they've still got a lot on their minds and they need to get it out at the same time. You've processed it, they need to also process it. So
Yeah, it's funny. I know my husband Mark is very open about the fact that we've been through therapy, both of us as a couple. So we went through a couples therapy, and many, many years ago, and we had this idea of when things build up, you had to. So if I used a pen, kind of, in the therapy room, we might use the spoon or something like that. And what would happen then was is that you would allow that person to talk. So if they have the pen, so if let's say you and I have a disagreement about something, we're not sure what's going on to that. So when we're more calm, we're going, right, okay, and then let's say you have the pen, and then it's a case of you will own it then, and then you will say, well, I felt this like when I heard you saying I felt it. So you're kind of own rather than you did because that just tends to get people's back up and they're thinking about a defense reply straight away. So it's thinking about owning excuse me, owning kind of how you felt as a result of the situation that happened. And then so you say it for about 10 minutes or so, you hand the pen to the other person, and here's the key thing that the person has to say back what they've heard. So I take
yes,
the pen back and I go, okay, Ben, I'm hoping I'm hearing this as best I can, but I'm hearing that when this happened, that you felt da and you felt da. And hearing that back with a person that you're having tension with, that's so powerful. That's so nurturing because you know that somebody's genuinely listening to you. It's important then the person who can acknowledge is I'm sorry you felt that way, and then they can say kind of, well, okay, this is what was happening for me, and then the other person then has to say back what that person was saying. It's a brilliant exercise in listening to each
I
other.
really like that. I really like that because I think that in when you're in an argument that's just sort of spiraled and snowballed into a big thing, I think the default is to think, oh, they've done this, they're kicking off about whatever it is, and then your response to that initially to get that short term gratification to be like, this is on my mind. It tends to be saying how they've contributed to that accumulating. Oh, you've not done, the dishes or whatever. Oh, well, that's because you left them on the side and fighting back and forth. And actually, it's
Yeah.
that's feeding into all of it. So if you remove yourself for a moment and go, actually, I'm hearing, yeah, the dishes were left on the side, and then you can actually answer it and figure out what's going on. It sort of removes that puts the brakes on that fast track one pace mind,
It's
doesn't it? And
when you're emotionally charged. There's no point in trying to have a rational conversation when you're emotionally charged. Sometimes you just gotta walk away. And then the next day when you're calm, I really recommend the pen technique or whatever. I really recommend that for people
And I
listening.
think it also mitigates interruptions as well, because one thing that, as I say, going back to me and my best friend Brianna growing up, we were both very much like interrupters, but it worked for us. So we'd flow the conversation, and I'd say something, and oh yeah, because blah blah blah, and, oh yeah, yeah, because this, and that worked really well for us because that was our communication style, and that's what developed over the years. And then growing up, I'd meet people and be like, oh yeah, I've got this problem. I go, oh yeah, I've got something like that because blah blah blah, and they'd look at me like, and to me, it took a long time to figure out what I'm doing. Is I've just basically what I call one up in them. Whereas
Yeah.
what I was doing was going, oh, Sheila's got, she's upset about her friend broke, stopped speaking to her, walked away, and she's upset about that breakup. And I'm going, oh yeah, I've had something similar. Is into to be like empathetic and be like, this is, I've got a similar situation. I can meet your emotions and understand that mindset. But what actually was coming across was, oh, we're switching subjects now, are we? And it took a long time to sort of figure out
Wow, Ben.
interruptions are hitting, it's forming a roadblock. It's not creating comparisons and jumping off points for us to match at. It's actually, for some people, making a barrier where they think, actually, I'm just trying to overrule what they're saying, or saying, this isn't a special condition for you. This isn't a situation that's just you. Everyone does this, and it's sort of invalidating those feelings, isn't it, in long
It
term for some
really,
people.
Ben, I'm loving your learning. I mean, wow, you have been on such a journey, you really have, because you've really learned an awful lot. I was laughing my head off because you call it the interrupters. In my mental health shows, in one of my shows, I call it the hijackers.
hijack it.
Yes, yeah. And so when something has happened to you, let's say a friend has stopped talking to you and you really need to speak about it and you go, oh, wait, I tell you, oh, wow, what's wrong? My friend stopped talking to me. Oh, really? Well, I had a friend too that stopped talking to me and I was friends with them for 20 years. And that's what I find. It's very interesting, Ben. Like, it's such an important point because oftentimes we hear this in the media. Britain get talking, people in general get talking, was ever listening to this. But then we have to ask, why do some people not talk? And actually, because if they do talk, what they find is that they need to talk, but the other person will make it about them, and they actually feel worse, and they don't have the capacity to deal with somebody else's stuff.
Yes. Yeah, we spoke about this in past. I think I can't
Yeah,
remember if we recorded it or if it was just us back and forth. And but absolutely, you're right, 100%. And you said like if you've got an emotionally overwhelming, like hitting that cognitive overload,
yeah,
sometimes you don't want to hear issues of someone else, and you need to be like, right, I can't deal with this right now. I'm
yeah.
here to vent. And actually, what's happened is you've doubled your workload there, really.
You've doubled
Um,
your workload. Yeah,
my thoughts on this is just sort of like looking at the broader picture. Is we're saying, you reflect on yourself and ask why, and avoid interruptions and avoid rumination and carrying that home and stuff. And a lot of people listening to this are going to be thinking like, why do I have to work on myself so much when actually we're talking about other difficult people? Why is it being cast back onto me? You know what I mean? Like that initial thought process of,
mm,
if you're talking about difficult people, others, why are you telling me to do so much to myself? I think it's worth establishing that realistically, if me and Sheila had an argument now and I went home and I was angry about it, I was thinking about it and spent all my energy on that, I'd be fatigued and drained and tired at the end of the day and just
yeah.
whinge my day. Spent the £86,000 as we talked about. But me, Sheila's just gone home and had a cup of water and petted a cat and watched, I'm a celeb or whatever. It's not on her mind. All I'm doing is
Yeah,
I'm ruining my own day, and I can't affect her behaviors and I can't affect her mind. Once the conversation's gone, once she's gone, I can't do anything about that. All I can do is change my perspective and my day and my
mm,
feelings. So I think it's about, like, yeah, we're talking about building on ourselves, but that's because that's within our power. Do you know what I mean? So if you're worried
absolutely.
about dealing with difficult people, I think sometimes, and this is something that I got from Aaron Sunner, who's she's a high intensity CBT specialist for like OCD and things. Her approach to like situations that you're worried about or dealing with really difficult people was to essentially, if you know it's coming up, say if it's like a client or something, form a list of everything you're worried about, and then from that list, take out everything, cross out everything that's out of your control, and then you're just left with what's in your control, and then just look at the main things, the easiest things that you can handle in that time frame, and
Mm.
just work on those. And if you can't handle any of them, that's absolutely fine. But just from doing that, your list is halved because you've got rid of what's out of your control. I
Yeah,
think it's like just sort of realizing that actually a lot of the difficult moments can be either avoided or reduced by checking in on yourself and making sure you're in the best place at
yeah,
that time.
you're absolutely spot on, Ben. It's working on the thing that you can change, and that's you.
Mm.
So that's
Yes.
why it's important to recognize where is the power, because while
Yes.
you're getting annoyed and da da da, what they're saying da da da, so but hang on a minute, what can you think differently so that you're not then being pulled down by this? And there's a technique that I share with many clients. It's called the outward mirror. And what I encourage is that, especially if they know they're going to be around with people who tend to project their opinions, very strong opinions, don't really have much time for your opinions, is that if you have an outward mirror protecting you around you, it's almost like they're just looking in the mirror, they're just kind of, they're talking about their own opinions. You don't have to take them on. So I really encourage that, for people during the Christmas time or whatever time, to almost have your own protective armor. Come up with whatever that armor is, Iron Man, whatever you want to imagine. and almost within your own armor, that trust that that you're doing your best and that's good enough. And then when
Yes.
somebody is criticizing you or somebody is trying to project or somebody's trying to change you, it's not the right to try and change you. You can agree to disagree here. So it's about protecting your power again and almost know that you can walk away, you can minimize the conversation. Obviously, if it gets abusive, we're on another level here. Nobody needs to tolerate any of that, should have to. But exactly what you're saying, Ben, that it goes back to the person that you can work on is you. That's why. Because who are you? Who are you and I, Ben, to try and make somebody else think how we think? How arrogant would that be? The same way, vice versa.
100%. There's 1,000 Sheilas out there in everyone's mind. There's not one Sheila. There's you, but then my
Yeah.
perspective of you is different to you. My mental recollection of you is different. Same way that if someone didn't meet you as a counselor, they just met you as a comedian, it'd be comedian Sheila or Buddy Sheila, or a woman who hit me in the car because she was turning right too fast, Sheila. Something like that. Is different
What are you
perspectives.
trying to say, Ben? What are you saying about my driving? I told you that in confidence, Ben. Come on.
But I think a lot of people spend a lot of energy trying to collate these different versions and align it and be like, this isn't who I am, I'm this person. When actually we should just be thinking, let's just be Ben, let's just be shit, let's just be who we are and let other people make their own minds. Being anyone else is a waste of you. So
Oh,
it's
being anyone else is a waste of you.
yeah.
Oh, do you hear that, folks? Have you noticed this podcast? Which every so often, Ben it will just do like a mic drop. He'll just drop a clanger. And look, I hope that when you listen back to this, and please in the write up, Ben, you do brilliant write ups anyway. You're right. Like that's going along with the autonomy. Live and let live. Allow people to be how they want to be, and then you get to choose how you want to be. I do want to touch upon something. So because I do believe people's stories are very powerful. So I'm going to share something here. So basically, we know that my dad passed in July this year. And I had a very complex relationship with my dad because he was of that generation of the man tells everybody what to do. And I always struggled with that. And then there's lots of different complexities. People can read my book if they want to know my backstory. But basically, because of past traumas in childhood, every time I would go back to Ireland, I'd have an awful episode of depression, and I would have to prepare myself for going back to Ireland because my dad was still in those behaviours, and so of my family, unconscious to them, were still in those behaviours. So whereas I'm over here in the UK, a well-respected counsellor, doing the stuff that I do, sometimes I go back to Ireland and I'd be treated like a kid. And I think there'll be a lot of people that can relate to this, especially at Christmas time, that sometimes when they go back into the family home, that their families can treat them like kids, even though they're adults now and they want to be treated very differently. And what was happening to me was it was really triggering me when I would come back after a time in Ireland. I would have a massive episode of depression again because of the knock-on effects of the trauma. And this is stuff I've managed over decades. Now it's interesting because my dad has passed. I'm guessing that's going to feel very different, and it has done it. It's lessened over the years, but it was still always difficult dealing with my dad's behaviours, and I used to minimise the amount of time I could spend with him because I knew it just wasn't serving me well to spend a lot of time around him. So, what I want to highlight for listeners here is be mindful of how old you feel when you go back to those situations. And it's above remind yourself that you are an adult now with resources, with choices, with you don't have to put up with behaviors anymore. So that I just really wanted to highlight the fact because I haven't really heard people talk about this, and I know it's something I personally struggle with decades, and I know from seeing clients for decades that they struggle with this as well, being around family members, and sometimes that can take them back to a place that might have been a good place for them, and their family may be stuck in those behaviors, but then you have to be able to be mindful to protect yourself. I don't know if you can relate to any of this, Ben. Can you?
Um, no, not directly, but I do actually have a question for you on that. So, do
Okay.
you feel like that? that sort of restricted access you gave yourself, that limited time with your father, do you feel like it took away from anything? Do you feel like you lost out on time with him, or do you feel like limiting that time actually, well, A, it prepared you better mentally for those moments, but also B, made those moments you spent together more special because it was, approached with the right mindset. You spent
Yeah.
a good amount of time together, but any longer you knew it would stale it. Like how do you feel about that?
It's a great question, Ben. I loved we were turning this around. I'm up for that. Okay, it's a great question. So just kind of two questions on that. One, did it take away from it? Absolutely. So when my dad passed, I kind of grieved over the dad I would have liked to have had years ago anyway. That because of those kind of generational behaviors, they got in the way of myself, and my dad having the relationship I would have liked to have had. And it does kind of get in the way of other relationships because you've got different cultures, especially the west of Ireland where I come from, different expectations. Be quiet, don't make a scene, don't be using your voice too much, everything against what I believe in, which is why I live in the UK. So it does get in the way. Like I'm sure my family will probably say, "Oh, shit, it can be a bit difficult sometimes," because they're just used to having a different way and being nice and letting everything be lovely. And I'd like to think I am a lovely person, but I'm also somebody that who had their voice quietened for so many years in my earlier life and found my voice that I don't want to. I believe in fairness and equality and, kind of autonomy, agree to disagree and stuff like that. So that stuff, all that stuff is nothing to do with me or my family. It's unfortunate social construction. It's all other stuff that does get in the way of having us, I think, a more relaxed relationship. In saying that, going back to your point, it's good that I'm mindful of all of that because I get to choose my life how I want to live my life. I do my own shows. I do obviously the podcast, the TikToks, all the stuff that you help me with, Ben. And my family and my friends, it's their right to choose the life that they want. So I think it's so important when we come to relationships, there's two or more people involved. It's not about you or me. It is part of it, but it is about compromise. So I think when I go back to Ireland, I compromise a bit. I think they compromise a bit, and we find a common ground. So we still manage to have a good laugh and take the piss out of each other.
Fair play. Brilliant. Do you find that because that those feelings were absent, what you was looking for in that relationship was absent in Ireland, when you moved over to England, do you find that you sort of either sourced or like chased after or just inherited, I guess, through friends? Do you find that your like support circle with your friends actually has those missing aspects that you wanted in the family? Do you find that you
Yeah,
found that within a
absolutely.
community
Yeah.
away from yeah.
Absolutely, Ben. It's basically filling a void. It's all of us as human beings, we have needs, and it is important that sometimes our family, they can't meet our needs for whatever reason. Some families are from generations where they never hugged, they never were comfortable with saying that they love you and stuff like that. That's how it is for them. It'll be difficult for them too. But however, you can find people in your life that are huggers, that, it's like my beautiful friend Pat, I call my English mom, and she's always telling me how proud she is of me and how much she loves me and hugs me whenever I need it. So, and my husband is great like that. He'll ask me, he knows not to assume or to tell me how I'm looking, that I think it's important, that when it comes to people, that we find the people that are on a wavelength that we can have a good time with. We balance it out. I think it's nice to spend a bit of time around difficult people. Don't tell them they're difficult because that won't go down well. Um, but it's a balance, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You mentioned a while ago, find your tribe, which is fantastic because it's like find your people, find the ones that can help you. But I think it's
Mhm.
without wanting to sound aggressive to anyone, I think it's like inherently selfish to think one person can fulfill every need that you have in life. I think it's really important that as social
Yeah,
animals, as as humans, we go and branch out, and especially coming into Christmas when you're going to be closing in and speaking to just family or just immediate family, things like that. We've got to understand that when we're having a conversation with like my brothers, for example, I can ask my brothers about mechanics or medical stuff because it's a mechanic and a nurse. But when it comes to like other emotional things, they're not there to provide those things. Whereas my mom might be able to. So it's to make sure that we negotiate these conversations with the right people at the right time, especially in Christmas. And the same with them, they'll be thinking, oh, I can come to Ben with this. But actually, if it's something else, if I'm getting frustrated with this thing, maybe go to, our dad or, and anything like that. So, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant, Ben. I think you've really touched upon such an important point here, especially coming towards the end of this chat, that it's recognize your own and other people's limitations.
Yes.
It's not fair to, yeah, but how do you feel? And then somebody who doesn't like talking about feelings, like, frig off, get out of my face. Find somebody who likes talking about feelings. It's like, I love deep-rooted conversations. I get bored with the surface level. I'm like, come on, let's really. And some people are like, no, Sheila, we just want to do a surface level. So, and that's fine. You've got to respect that. The other thing that I would say, folks, especially with family, is try and do less of the talking. If talking is difficult, try and find activities that you actually enjoy doing together. Like Christmas could be a wonderful time to have to create some lovely new memories here, folks. So I really encourage to kind of find a new game or something, trial and error, but to try and find stuff and activity you can do together. And it can be a wonderful experience. And even if you can't stand each other, if you go off and you do kart racing or whatever, and you just have a bit of fun with it, how wonderful is that? You just spend time together.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I really liked that that you can't do everything, you can't give everything. It's a really good point. I've got a weird mindset that I've got a business practice that I've got from years ago, but that I've sort of translated to my own personal life that really works for me in this aspect, which is I got it from business coaches. One was called Mark Harris, and then recently it was reiterated by a lady called Jackie Hale. Both fantastic what they do. But it's essentially adjust your scope, not your budget, which means essentially adjust what you deliver, not your price. So I charge a fixed price. If someone says, oh, can we do it for cheaper? I'll go, actually, we can't do it for cheaper, but I can adjust, if you want 10 things, I can do 7 or 6 of them instead, and adjust it to meet what you can give. So essentially see yourself as like a finite resource. I'd call it like I've got like 10 points to spend each day. Let's call it that. I've got 10 points to spend. I'm going to spend 2 points on the drive here because someone cut me up and I'm frustrated. I'm going to spend 5 points at work, dealing with clients and things like that. I'm going to spend 1 point at the gym after the work because it's, physically fatiguing. So I'll go home. That's what I've got 2 points left when I'm home, which means that when I get requests, if it's too much, I'm not going to have the budget to spend there. I'm not going to be able to meet that scope that people are after. So it's worth saying, like get comfortable basically saying that, I can't do X, Y, Z. Maybe I could just do X today and leave Y tomorrow. Or if I do an X and Y now, spend my 2 points. Could you handle Z? And actually start negotiating the fact that actually you can't do everything. You can't control everything. Some things have to be delegated. Some things have to be pushed. But you've got a certain amount of points for mental consciousness that you can spend each day without, overspending, without eating into your sleep and into your and stuff. How do you want to spend that emotional budget, essentially?
The emotional budget, I love it, Ben. The emotional budget, that is.
And sometimes that can go up and down. Obviously, some days I might have 15 points, sometimes I might have 5. Life's not linear. We've got hills and valleys and ebbs and flows and stuff. Same way that, healing's not linear. Life's not linear. So sometimes you go to a conversation, more frustrated, and sometimes you go into it really open-minded. Sometimes it's take it day by day and making sure that
wow. Fantastic stuff, Ben. Okay, speaking of mental capacities, now that I'm mindful of time, I've got to go and see clients now and finish off the year on the run up to Christmas. Folks, I never claim to be an expert. I don't believe any of us are. So if any of you listen to this have got any advice or tips that you want to share on how you've managed difficult people or you've managed yourself, about difficult people, please feel free to share. As always, you know that we hope you find this useful. That's why we do what we do. That's why Ben spends hours doing the editing and doing the write up and whatever he needs to do to get this out. So please feel free to share. Definitely subscribe. If you haven't subscribed already, folks, please do. It's free. Happy days.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Ben, fair play to you. It's lovely to have a podcast with you. You know, considering you've been editing these for 2 years and then doing the TikToks and all of that. So I personally want to say a massive thank you to you, Ben. You're very talented, you're very conscientious, and I really appreciate you and the work that you do.
Oh, thank you, Sheila. I feel like I've just gained, subconsciously so much from you just going through all this. So it's been a lovely experience, and I think it's been beneficial for our business, but also us as people. It's definitely helped me. Just
Thank you, Ben.
throughout the years and stuff. So I've really enjoyed it.
Do you know what? I like to think it's a win-win, and listeners out there, we're all learning from each other. We're all doing our best, and that's good enough. So, listeners out there, thank you so much. I know there's some people who regularly listen to this podcast and really gain from listening to it. So, thank you so much, as always, for your support. And please help us spread the word because, we never know who this might help. So, for now, folks, have a lovely Christmas and enjoy managing that. You've a lot more power than you realise. I will be doing the same. I'll be going back to Ireland. I'll have all my coping mechanisms ready as of when I need them, but I'll make sure to have a good time. And I'll be sad too because obviously it'll be the first Christmas with my dad. So, it's so important. Just go with that emotional roller coaster. If you're not okay, and if somebody else can handle it, they can feck off. No, I'm joking. Just kind of keep away from they can't handle it. Ben, thank you as always. I'm waffling now. Thank you, listeners. Have a lovely Christmas.
Thank you, Sheila. Take care.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Counsellor Convos with Sheila McMahon. If you've enjoyed this episode, consider checking out her YouTube channel or pop on her website, mindmanagementforyou.com.